Hello everybody, this is Devin with another video on how to play for the DCHL. And today I wanted to cover a faction that the GBHL is covering right now in their entire army book tutorials where they go over every unit individually. This is the faction of Moria. This is an awesome faction to play, incredibly competitive. I highly recommend it to any beginners. Not only is it very easy to get into, but you'll have no problem at all mastering this army. I would think that pretty much any player's play style also fits here. This army is good at spamming, it's good at really brutal monster attacks, it's good at having pretty much a mix of anything you really want for just any type of player. It keeps things interesting. You can play this army multiple different ways. I think one of the greatest strengths of this army is its ability to hoard. It has the cheapest models in the game for a very, very good cost. See, a lot of armies have models at the same price value that this one does. However, none have quite a points effective model at the same price. So what I'm talking about is the point value that ruffians are, that you might see amongst like Lake Town militia, stuff like that. And yes, it's true, hobbits actually can get even cheaper than these guys, but for the points cost that you will get for the basic warrior, which is the Moria Goblin, it's all these goblins you actually see here mixed around the terrain on this display board. These goblins are an incredibly cheap cost. They actually are probably too cheap for everything they're capable of doing, for the stat line they're given. And this makes this army one of the most incredible in the game as far as a hoarding, because even when they hoard, they don't die too easily. And that's actually also in part because of their shamans, which we'll get to in a minute. Even when they do want to hoard, they can hoard some stronger units, such as the Gundabad Black Shields. Here's actually a converted unit. You'll see a lot of people making conversions like this. A lot of people can't afford the Gundabad Black Shield models since you have to buy so many of them. Here you'll see I've just modeled capes on my Gundabad Black Shields, and it actually makes for a really nice conversion. This is also the great thing about this army. You can convert quite a bit of it, and it's extremely acceptable amongst most players. Probably difficult to convert the spiders, but if you've noticed for the say Warg Marauders, they can be converted extremely easily. I'd say the drummers can be converted pretty easily. Anyone can find a drum or make one or anything like that, and putting two sticks for the drummers, pretty easy to do. Even like say Druzhag's a model in the back here. You might see him right behind Derbert's, where he is his bats that he often comes with are used as a bat swarm. The bat swarm being this model over here, which a lot of people kind of hate. Its bats are really, really massive, almost fantasy-esque. I know GBHL, Jamie, I believe, doesn't like their model at all. But overall, the army can be converted quite easily. Here's another one, actually, the Watcher. A lot of people made the Watcher model from the old Games Workshop article where it taught you how to do that. As you can see, our community has gone ahead and done that. So I'd say that's another great thing about this army, is it's very easy to get into. Back to how to play this army, though. Another thing besides hoarding it can do is monster spamming. This army, about half of it is monsters. Even its heroes, most notorious is the Spider Queen, which you'll see over there. Otherwise, you can spam lots of cave trolls, cave drakes, dragons. I don't have them here. Honestly, if I put all the monsters that are available to this army on this board, it would probably fill the entire board. So I'll show you it over the course of this video. Another thing that is really good, actually, to be honest, when a 40k player comes in to play this game, I would often compare this this faction to Tyranids. Tyranids or Skaven, if you're going to compare it to a fantasy army. The reason being, I mean, it's just like Tyranids. Tyranids have filled lots and lots of monsters, can spam lots and lots of units. You can play it either way. Skaven can't quite play that way, but still best comparison you can have for the fantasy world. Another thing you can do Another reason this army spams quite a bit is because all its heroes are really cheap, especially its captains and its shamans, which you'll actually see here. Many of its heroes also, there's not a lot of strong leadership here as far as like heavy hitter type of heroes, and that makes them able to grab more and more troop choices for their heroes. Now there are some high costed ones such as the Watcher or the Balrog or anything like that, but even when you get them, you feel like you can still get lots and lots of warriors just because of how cheap this army is. Another thing about this army is it's incredibly fast. Now, a lot of people think, oh, goblins are 5 inches, 5-inch movement. Well, how could that be really fast? The thing about it is the goblins can traverse terrain better than most any other race, any other faction, and not talking about difficult terrain here, but I'm talking about like mountainous terrain. They get +1 on all their rolls to climb anything, and so when you're fighting in cities and mountains, I mean, the thing about Lord of the Rings is it's played on a lot of vertical terrain, and these guys have no problem getting around it. In fact, probably the kings of movement are the spiders. The spiders treat all terrain as clear regardless of its angle. They can go upside down on the sides of walls, wall running, and everything. This army has no problem getting around your opponent's forces and using the terrain to its advantage. That's what makes it highly mobile. Not only that, but more than half of the army's warrior models all move over 5 inches. They all move like 10 and 8 actually, depending. Actually, most of them moving about 10 inches. A lot of them are very quick, especially the spiders themselves. Even the heroes themselves also move very quick. Lots of just really fast units available to you. This army moves very quickly. Lastly, I would actually like to point out is the magic. The magic in this army is extremely powerful. Actually, the Gundabad Shaman, which is not pictured here, but here's a picture for you guys. Kind of an awkward, silly-looking model, but this Shaman is something that can cast Tremor and Shatter, 2 extremely powerful magical spells. Even if not that, then it has Fury, and Fury can be amplified in this army by Groblog. Groblog turns all of Fury into 5-ups rather than 6-ups, which saves that point of might and allows you to cast it, use your shamans as sort of a captain unit. This is actually a really preferred tactic amongst a lot of expert players. Now, I mean, so many advantages to this army. What are the disadvantages to it? Well, low fight. That's one thing. Even amongst a lot of your bigger units, low fight will be kind of a problem for you. Even a lot of your monsters will have kind of like middle range fight for a monster, especially compared to monsters of other races. Other armies. And another problem with this army is heroes. Lord of the Rings is known for its amazing heroes and the heroic duels and all the crazy stuff heroes can do. Well, this army doesn't do that. So if you like cinematic quality your army, then this is not it for you. This army really doesn't care about its heroes at all. It just cares about throwing as many models as it can and getting all of its cinematic value out of the creatures that it can put on the field. The next thing I would often say about this army is weak defense. Defense can be gotten, like, let's say, by the Gundabad Black Shields. They can go to Defense 6, which is pretty good for a basic troop. But overall, if we have to say it, this army is a glass cannon, in a sense. I wouldn't call it a glass cannon unless you say go for a spider army over here. Spiders hit extremely hard, but can't take a lot of punishment. Overall, the goblins are pretty survivable. They do have Fury and have almost every single game. I actually have yet to fight them in a game where Fury wasn't available. And to be honest with you, I guess I can't really call them a glass cannon, but their defense really is kind of middle range to low. It kind of hits that low side as you get more of the other units like bats and spiders and wargs and stuff like that. Even some of the goblin units get generally about 4 defense, so you can't say that their defense is pretty reliable. Also, lastly, weak range. If you haven't noticed, a lot of the models that I'm showing here, I mean, unless you pick a dragon with fire breath, you're not killing anything at range. I mean, there's a couple tidbit things. Watcher can use some range attack. That's okay. It's really an ability to get into combat with things. But otherwise, I wouldn't count on killing anything outside of range with this army. It just really doesn't rely on bows whatsoever. So now that we've gone over the strengths and weaknesses, let's get into some tactics on this army. All right, now unfortunately, because of the wide range of options for this army, it's really, really difficult to say a tactic. I mean, some of the tactics come across as pretty obvious, hoarding being one of the obvious ones. Of course, just spam lots of models. Really, what I would go for is little tricks here. Tricks that you'll see used quite a bit throughout the, many times extra players play this game. One of them is to use Druzhag. This is said over and over and over again, and it can't be stressed how awesome his ability is. A lot of people would recommend, okay, use Druzhag, combine him either with bats, and you can fly over. If you use the bats, you can do... I'm sorry, I should explain Druzhag a little bit more. Druzhag has a spell that powers up bats, wargs, and spiders to just an unbelievable degree. +3, their strength, attacks, not defense, courage, and fight value. And you can use basically these units as assassin units. That is one common way to use Druzhag in combination with these units. Fly bats over, enrage the group that actually makes it to your opponent wherever you need them to be, and then just go crazy on your opponent. Spiders being another way to do this, stuff like that. I mean, that's one combination that you'll see quite often. Another thing that I've seen that I actually kind of like is Gundabad Black Shield Shaman spamming. If you use them a lot, they're tremors. You can only expect a tremor really to go off once. So usually tremor is kind of a disruption thing. But if you have lots and lots of them, you can actually field tons of goblins alongside them and just cast tremors all over the place. I mean, with that many tremors going off, it is really, really difficult to keep up with it. It's really a pain in the butt. I'd actually say maybe 6 Gundabad Shamans with tons and tons of normal Moria goblins. Maybe a couple of Black Shields here and there and stuff like that. Maybe a full warband. And that's really all you need. And a Gundabad Black Shield drummer. I wouldn't recommend the regular drums for the same reason JBHL Jamie said. They're pretty much unreliable. And on top of that, if we're going to go for another normal, commonly used tactic, we could say actually the Watcher. If you want to play the Watcher, a lot of people actually will play the Watcher in a way that they don't even really announce this guy. He pretty much... he's kind of... Okay, so you put him in your list. You can allow people to see it. Yeah, sure. But you never say anything. You play your army as if he doesn't even exist, and at the last minute, pop him up behind battle lines or pop him up through an opponent's army, or whenever you're ready to spring your trap. A lot of times throughout the course of the game, he really kind of goes forgotten quite a bit, and you can easily put your opponent in a position where he didn't want to be. Other combos, I mean, monster spamming, stuff like that, it's really difficult to say any combo. This army can work in a lot of ways. It doesn't have too many really bad units. The only thing I wouldn't want to do, unless you want to be a complete butthead, is to spam Warg Marauders. They're not really shown here. I do have a bunch of them modeled, but like I said, can't fit everything on this terrain. But those are really nasty units, and I honestly wouldn't want you to be yelled at and spit on for playing tons and tons of them. It's one of those units that if you play more than probably 6, then your opponent will be really mad. So, I don't know. I think personally they're beatable, but they are extremely tough. Otherwise, spamming monsters, I mean, realistically, you pick up an army of these guys, and you're going to do just fine, really, no matter how you combine them up. I think, actually, this army plays really well no matter what. So, you should have a very, very easy time with this. Alright, now, for how to buy this army for under $100, this is actually going to be pretty hard. Fortunately, there isn't really many options for the Goblins anymore. And a lot of their box sets have been kind of bundled up into commander sets and stuff like that. Not gonna lie to you, if you're gonna do this army, you're really gonna need it to be outside of Games Workshop. Games Workshop just isn't really a good price model for this. eBay is gonna be your best friend. A lot of people who have started this game often have Goblin models and are selling them on eBay for really, really, really cheap. So if you absolutely must buy from Games Workshop, however, or for some reason you just don't like using eBay or anything else like that, I have a couple options for you. Unfortunately, monsters are way out of your price range for under $100. You're just not going to be able to do it. However, as we mentioned before, an army of goblins actually can still be really fun to play and is still competitive. So we can still work with that. Now, the first thing I would try to do probably is maybe about 3 boxes of warriors. Fortunately, you're going to need a lot of goblins for this army. And what you can do is the goblins that are raising their hands up in the air, you could actually maybe model capes just like I did onto the goblins, and that would become like just a pretty cheap captain model. This army is going to require a lot of conversions if you're going to want to make it work for under 100. So keep those guys. Then you can buy Druzhag for $12.25. If you buy him, he comes with bats on his back stand, so you can put the bats on a separate base, and there you go. You have bats for free that came automatically with the Druzhag model, plus you know, a bunch of captain models that you modeled out of the box of warriors. And then I'd round it off with a box of wild wargs. Now this bumps it slightly above $100 at about $110. But if you do this, then you can take the archers from the boxes. Those are actually little use to you, and they're easy conversions into warg marauders. And if you paint some of the wild wargs a little different than the other wild wargs, you can get some easy warg chieftains. So there you'll have free bats, warg chieftains, easy conversions for the warg marauders, which you're going to want anyway. And honestly, Gundabad Black Shields aren't hard to make out of this either. Let's say you just use Druzhag as a Gundabad Black Shield Shaman. There's really no problem with it. You'll end up having a bunch of capes. I guess you can model some like green stuff capes. It's really not that difficult onto your goblins. And you have a pretty cheap and yet expensive point-wise force that you can deploy right immediately. So I think that's probably one of the best ways you're going to do it. If you want to go a lot simpler than that, say you really don't want to model anything and you just kind of want to paint and go, you can do 3 boxes of Goblin Warriors and a Gundabad Black Shield set. Just say that all the Gundabad Black Shields are captains. Not a problem at all for most players. They kind of look captain-like anyway. The only problem you're going to have is some of the Gundabad Black Shields have a spear, which the Goblin Captain doesn't have. If you really want to go this route, then what you can say is the ones with spears, take away their shields, just cut them off in some way. You could say they're Shaman models. Not a problem. The Shaman would probably look a little, I mean, the little cloaks, the fur cloaks they have, kind of make it look Shaman-esque. So this would be an easy way to start the army as well. If you must have a monster, then the only 2 options you're going to have that are not going to bring you above $100 are the Cave Troll or the Spider Queen. Me personally, I recommend the Spider Queen. I think the Spider Queen is a lot more effective for the price you're going to pay for her, money-wise is what I'm talking about. So use the Spider Queen. You can buy 2 boxes of goblins on top of that, and then to lead those goblins, you only really have $15 after that. You can either do Druzhag, where you can power up your Spider Queen, or the broodling she pumps out, plus detach the bats, put on a bat swarm, or you can probably just buy for $15 a box of Prowlers. Once again, just use them as captains. Now, I understand they do have axes, and no captain can really have axes. I mean, you're on a budget here, so this is probably the best way you're going to be able to do it. However, they're the only box set that's $15 that gives you 3 models just like this. Otherwise, I'd say probably the Gundabads again or something else. Unfortunately, Fantasy and 40K don't really lend itself to very good models for you. I've already looked. Giant bats for the vampire accounts are more expensive than they are in Lord of the Rings. In fact, if I were a fantasy player, I'd just buy lots and lots of Lord of the Rings bats. If you're trying to get the bats anyway, because I think the fantasy bats look ridiculous. But other than that, 40K doesn't have anything for you. The goblins look way too cartoonish in fantasy. So this is really your only option. Now, the only exception I've seen to this is actually the Spider Riders from the fantasy set. With the Spider Riders, you actually get 8 of them for $35. So if you really want to make a spider army, then what you can do is actually get the Spider Queen, just to keep it thematic. Then you can get the Spider Rider units. Actually, I believe their actual name is called the Forest Goblin Spider Riders. If you get them, you'll get 8 of them. And actually, here's a version of them where someone painted them up. They actually look pretty good, a lot better than expected. So if you do want a spider army, that would be $70 right there for the 2 of them. And then you can just top that off with a unit that can lead them, either a command pack or however you want. I personally wouldn't go a command pack option. You can have a really fast moving race. If you want, you can add in maybe another command pack of goblins or something like that. Just something that can lead them. But I was just making you aware that the Forest Goblin Spider Riders can be painted just like this and can make quite an effective force. A lot of conversions are actually, proxies are actually considered okay, considering you can't buy Ashrak, Groblog, Druzhag, Durberts. You can't buy him. You can't buy a lot of models. A lot of different models really are just out of production now at this point. Another option you have, some people already have the Goblin Drummers. A lot of people got them from way back in the day. If you happen to see them, I would actually recommend buying them. Goblin Drummers are pretty useless, as GBHL Jamie already mentioned in his videos, which you should definitely watch. But the thing is, a lot of them look kind of shaman-like. I can imagine goblin shamans holding up 2 bones. I mean, to be fair, goblin shamans already is a ridiculous concept. Even if not a concept, their models, you know, whatever. I guess they look as they look. But I think this wouldn't be a bad aesthetic for them. I think this actually could work out. If you want, you can try to model the drum on the back of one of them and maybe turn it into a Gundabad. It's up to you how you want to try to work this out. But these are the 3 ways I'd try to, you know, get this army to be played under $100. So just to recap, we got Druzhag, Wild Warg box, and 3 boxes of Goblin Warriors. I think that's the best option for your money. If you must stay under $100, then it's Goblin Black Shields with 3 boxes of Goblin Warriors, though taxes still may bring it above, a little above 100 even in this case. But that is a good spam, I suppose, spam list and whatnot. If you must get a monster, then the Spider Queen, 2 boxes of Goblins, and the Prowlers are probably your best bet. And if for anyone else who wants to do some online shopping, highly recommend eBay. So, otherwise, you probably need a bigger budget. Unfortunately, this is a spam list. And not only is it a spam list, it is a monster list for, a force with lots and lots of monsters. So you're just really going to need to spend a little more money for this army. So I guess in the strengths and weaknesses of this army, we can say as a weakness is price. Price, money-wise, it will hurt your bank a little bit. So these are my best ways to proxy it out. Let me know what you guys think. What you guys think of the army and everything like that. I will cover Isengard in my next video. I've gotten a lot of requests for that, and we should have that one up soon. Sorry for the delay on this. As you guys know, I am sort of a one-man show when it comes to video production. However, we are getting more people to help out very, very soon. So hopefully we can pump out as many videos as GBHL. Till then, thanks for watching.